Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Organics Show. My name is Jordan, and today I am joined by the ecosystem gardener, or Brendon, from South Australia in Adelaide. Brendon is creating incredible native ecosystems in people's backyards. He is transforming lawns and desolate areas into thriving water features and water landscapes, water ecosystems with flowing rivers, creeks, these types of things on any kind of scale. It's really interesting to hear the entire thought process from start to finish in creating one of these habitats that brings in all of the natural wildlife and provides a bit of a hot spot for these wildlife to come back to for a drink or to live in some of these plants and bee hotels and all sorts of things that are created around these ecosystems. Now, Brendan shares with us his journey into becoming a landscape gardener and the various different things that he's done to lead him to where he is, and shares some incredible knowledge on those ponds and water features in terms of how they work, how we can best install them, and also some things that we can do, everybody can do in their own neighborhoods to take control, take sovereignty of the land that they're on, and transform it into a thriving ecosystem where we can all live. So let's do it. If this interests you, please stick around for the conversation. I'm sure you're going to find so much value and you're going to love it. This is the conversation with Brendon, the ecosystem gardener.
I was working at Centennial Park, which is a large cemetery here in Adelaide, and I was doing groundsman work like gardening, mulching, pruning. There was like 8,000 roses, so we always had to stay on top of the roses. But
8,000.
yeah, a lot of roses. They all need to be pruned. They all need to be like spot sprayed for disease and fertilized and deadheaded every year.
Hmm.
So that was a mammoth task.
Yeah.
But as a cemetery worker, we were obliged to work in the crematorium as well. So I spent some time burning remains for about 6 weeks. I
That's
was like 20 bodies a day.
that's crazy.
Yeah, so that was an interesting job. And then as part of the job as well, you have to go out into the grave section. So you actually have to like dig the graves, set up the funerals, and then do some other crazy stuff as well, where you kind of move bodies around a little
My
bit, which kind of
goodness.
people don't really understand that that actually happens at cemeteries. Like,
Yeah, hard. It's got to get somewhere. Like the body doesn't just magically have all this prep done by itself. That's crazy. How did you, sorry, I know this is digress straight from
yeah.
the normal thing, but how did you find your mental health during that time? Was it hard to stay positive or can you detach from some of these things?
I found it quite easy to detach from it.
That's good. That's good.
Found like just the regular day to day, like my family back in New Zealand would stress me out more than what I was doing at the job.
Right.
Uh, but there was a few occasions where it was like a really young person had died in a tragic way, which was just like really, quite shocking. And
Yeah, of course.
so there was a lot of like, it was a bit powerful, but it wasn't like bad on my mental health or anything like
Yeah,
that.
okay. Oh, that's good. I've always just wanted to ask, but how that would work. But anyway, sorry, keep going. So you were working on gardens in this place, yeah?
Yeah, so yeah, started off doing gardens and then made my way through the crematorium and the grave section. And then I I built my own pond because there was lovely water features at the park. I was inspired, like big goldfish and turtles everywhere. I was very inspired. So I built my own pond just here. And then I built it completely wrong with the wrong materials. So out to a local pond builder here in South Australia. And he enjoyed my work so much that he said, like, if you want to work for me, you can. So for a couple of years, I worked with this landscaper doing water features. I left the park. I had enough
Sweet.
body stuff and
Yeah.
bodies. So, yeah, I just started working for him. And yeah, I was able to kind of delve more into native plants, and like kind of sustainable, kind of naturalistic, backyards and suburban environments. And that's where I find myself today. Um, yeah, building ponds and water features, wetlands and native gardens and things. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment, and yeah, it's a lovely job. Couldn't be
Mate,
happy.
I I agree. I think from the stuff that I've seen you share, I highly encourage people to go and check it out because all of the things that you've shared, you share in detail of the before and after, a lot of the whole project as it goes on, and then as it matures once you've finished it as well, which I think is really, really cool. Would you run us through like a typical project? And I know there's probably no typical project under that heading, but in terms of like just the basics of what you have to do to get it from start to finish. I'll give you a little bit of an example of prep. So you've got one that I saw was just lawn. You had a complete lawn area. You then came in with diggers. You're carving out all of this, doing some land work. You reshaping the land. Then you're bringing in some enormous rocks, um, piping, and pumps and things like this to set up, have a pond, some flowing water, some waterfalls, some native plants, etc., 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 etc. Can you just run me through some of the things that you do from start to finish to transform a space?
Yeah, well, it normally starts with a consultation. So I normally go out to the client's house and we assess the land. I try to find an area in the house where it allows you to see the water feature or the main feature of the garden from inside the house.
Cool.
I don't want to have like a feature that's way out in the corner somewhere that you never see. You want to like either look out your window and see it or like walk out your front door and it's right there.
Great point.
Not only does it just allow you to see it more, it just allows the wildlife to come closer to the house as well. So, like, yeah, instead of having a pond way in the corner where you might get some birds every now and again, like if it's, right up next to the house, you'll see, little birds coming and taking a bath, and you'll see,
Yes.
maybe a koala comes down from a tree and has a little drink in the hot summer day. So yeah, I try and find a nice spot that's super close to the house. And yeah, once we're kind of locked in on a budget and an overall design, I'll show up on the site and yeah, we'll have our machines and yeah, we basically, for me, I have an idea where I'm going to place, maybe the biological filter and
Mm-hmm.
an idea on where I'm going to place the mechanical filter. And once I get those, it's just a matter of excavating to fit those components in.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes very organically. Like once you get past the liner and the filters and stuff, and it's just the rock work. I like to imagine that the rocks kind of tell me where they want to go. Like once you place that first boulder and it's nice and solid, that's going to dictate the second, the third, the fourth.
Mm-hmm.
It just becomes a puzzle piece at that stage. And then obviously you come in with like the natural bits of timber as well, just to soften the edges and then the plants. But like as soon as I'm finished, like the feature in my eyes should look as bad as it will ever look, even though it looks crystal clear and beautiful. Like if
Yeah.
a pond is in the ground or a garden is in the ground, it evolves. So it'll never look the same day to day. I just love the evolution of a garden, and how it's forever changing. And like you can come back a year or two later and it's just a completely different space. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's so rewarding and magical to come back and see. It's hard work digging the pond and doing the rock work and moving the gravel, but I always forget the hard work at the end of it where I come back and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is such a nice space.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I can absolutely agree because like I imagine seeing, like you said, the progression of the plants and the native like animals and things and insects and all of these birds coming together in this ecosystem which you're trying to create. That's your whole thing. Um,
mm,
you would see that evolution, then you have that enjoyment. There's so many things that you said that I want to go into.
mm,
The first one, yeah, I loved how you said having it close to the house because that integration with the client's life, they want to see and feel part of it because then they're going to go out there and actually spend their time and
mm,
effort tending to it if they need to, and enjoying it and noticing it. So I really appreciate how you do that and that sort of thing. And then when it comes to talking about the plans and like planning out these things, how much of um do the clients know going into it what it's supposed to look like, and how much creative freedom do you have to kind of come in and say, hey, look, this is probably what's going to work best, even though you may want this situation?
Mm. Yeah, well, I suppose it's different for every client or every customer, I should say. So sometimes they're just like, I've seen what you do whatever you want. This is how much money I have. And
Cool.
oh my gosh, this is so cool. Other times it's like what I want. This is my budget. What can we achieve with this?
Hmm.
And so it's often, yeah, it's you're working with the client for the most part. I enjoy when the clients are like involved, but not super involved.
Hmm.
Like I like it where they're like, oh, I wouldn't mind a little like a big destination boulder here. And I'm like, okay, awesome. That's cool. We can make that happen. But when they're like, oh, I wonder if I can put this rock with this rock, and then it becomes like I'm like, oh, okay, maybe just go back inside. We'll sort it out. Like start watching you place the rocks and they're like, oh, I want it on this angle. That's when it becomes like a bit.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy where they're like, I want this type of waterfall. I want a nice high drop here, or I want like a beachy zone. I'm like, that's possible. Let's do it. But yeah, when they get a little bit too pedantic, that's where I'm like, it becomes more of a nuisance than like a collaboration, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense because they're giving you some sort of creative structure is really nice. So it's like I want it to kind of end up in this section with a
Yeah,
big boulder. You can go, cool, I can see that and I'll make it work how I think I can make it work.
that's right.
But yeah, if there's backseat driving going on, it's not fun.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. So yeah, I like to imagine it's like a nice collaboration, and I really take in like clients' thoughts. I'm like, if they have a random idea, I'm like, that could be possible. Like, we
mm,
it happens. So no,
that's
it's
and it also
pretty
gives
cool.
you things that you might not have thought out as well. Uh,
Yeah,
or
that's
trying to
right.
create something that you might find a bit challenging. Um,
Yep.
let's go to the pumps then. So you've got two pumps. You've got a biological filter and you've got a mechanical filter. Can you talk me through why the two and what they're doing?
Yeah. So in a small system, like a small pond, for example, you only really need one pump. And that pump will sit in the mechanical filter, and the mechanical filter is in the form of a skimmer box. So the pump sits at the bottom of the skimmer box and draws water into the skimmer. And because you've got water being pulled across the pond into the skimmer box, when debris will land on the water, it gets pulled into the skimmer. And then there's a basket or a net in the skimmer box that you can empty out the leaves, empty out
Mm,
the algae or any waste that lands on the pond. Um, and then from that point, the pump in the skimmer pushes the water up to your biological filter,
hmm.
which I call it a biofalls. That's what it's called. It's an aquascape biofalls. And that is essentially like a glorified, very expensive bucket with a number of filter pads inside of it. And the filter pads just provide a high surface area for bacteria to colonize. So
Hmm.
denitrifying bacterias that break down nitrogen, um, nitrites and nitrates, as well as ammonia. So it breaks those components down into more um, eatable chunks for the plants. So yeah, it breaks down the nitrites and the ammonia into nitrates, and then the
Yep.
plant absorb the nitrates. So
That's
by
brilliant.
pulling out the large bits of debris, you're removing nutrients. And then any small nutrients that accumulate in the pond via fish waste or just leaf matter that falls to the bottom and disintegrates, that's broken down even further and absorbed by the beneficial bacteria. So
Cool.
when you've got those two components working well together, it's almost, you can't fail with a
Mm,
pond. Sometimes with ponds, um, you know, you've got to really not nail that biological filtration. Sometimes in just a stagnant pond, you can have really healthy crystal clear water, but you need a huge amount of plant matter to be filtering that. If you just
mm.
had a little tub out in the sun with a one or two plants, it's very quickly probably going to go green and develop algae, um, unless you've packed it full of plants, and then it becomes almost like a self-sustaining system.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, there's different types of ponds. You can have stagnant or just no moving water, in which case you need a huge amount of plants. Or you have like a flowing pond, in which case you need mechanical and biological filtration for it to just be crystal clear and functioning well.
Right. So this is obviously somewhat mimicking like a natural process, right? And
Yeah.
um we might see like creeks, rivers, these types of things. We'll have plants all along the edges, mosses, these
Mm,
types of things that do a lot of that filtration. Is that right? And
that's
then
right. Yeah.
what happens in the pond scenarios? Is it just a massive organic matter that is sort of creating this habitat to break it all down?
Yeah, so essentially, the systems I build almost mimic a stream or a river system
Hmm.
as opposed to like a pond system. Because the water is in constant motion, that's not how a pond or a natural pond or dam or lake functions. They do have intake and output via like a stream coming in and a stream going out, but for the most part, the water is relatively still. And so yeah, in a dam or a lake, you either have an anaerobic environment, in which case you've got bacteria that don't rely on oxygen,
Hmm.
or you have an aerobic environment in which you have a lot of plant matter. There's a lot of oxygen in the system, and so when you have an anaerobic environment where there's not a lot of oxygenation, you start to develop like really nasty smells.
Hmm.
Like you've ever like been around a pond that isn't moving, or you've
Yeah.
put foot in a pond and it had a really nasty smell, that's oftentimes the ammonia. So that ammonia is building up. It's not being broken down because there's not enough
Hmm.
oxygen in the water. So oxygen helps with that the nitrogen cycle. So when I build my ponds, I'm really trying to like nail that nitrogen cycle and get that functioning really well. And then I won't have any nasty smells or green water or anything like that. So yeah, I'm mimicking
Wow.
stream section in that
Mm.
like a stream when stuff lands in a stream, it often gets like moved downstream in a way. That's almost like a
Yeah.
mechanical filter. And then the biological filter of a stream is the plants on the outer edges absorbing that nutrients. It's the pebble and the gravel that make up the stream bed that hold the beneficial bacteria that break it down. So yeah, in a way, these systems are more like a stream or a creek. Even though they've got a pond, they've got fish. It's
Yeah.
more of a stream system. So yeah.
It's really clever, man. I love how you're thinking about all that kind of stuff because it has to balance out to become an ecosystem, to
Mm,
bring in a bit of everything, to bring in the insects and the birds and the frogs and all of this. You
mm,
can't have something that's out of whack, especially if it's coming down to the original food source and water source for all
yeah,
of these things.
yeah.
Um, let's talk about a bit of the challenges then with that. So have you come across challenges post setting up some of these things? And then how do you envisage rectifying these types of things, or
Yeah,
ways to rectify?
the challenges with building water features are managing water quality. So water quality for people, they want to have crystal clear, beautiful water. I always tell my clients straight away, you're going to have algae. Like algae is an inevitable part of a pond or a water feature, freshwater water feature. And so you have to become okay with algae. You have to learn to love it. You have to understand that it's actually beneficial. It's absorbing the excess nutrients in the system, even though it's ugly and it's nasty and it's slimy. It's not doing the pond any harm. It's actually acting as a bit of a medicine for the pond. And sometimes it's hard to make that clear to clients
Yeah.
because algae is oftentimes just looks like detritus, like it's quite, you know, ugly and unsightly.
Mm-hmm.
But I always tell them, when the pond or water feature is first constructed, you're going to have a huge amount of algae, like an outbreak of algae to begin with. And that's just because the beneficial bacteria colonies are still catching up. So it's actually really interesting. There's graphs that show throughout the year you have algae seasons. When it's warmer and hotter, you have more algae and you have more beneficial bacteria. But then throughout the year, when it gets colder, the bacteria will dip down and the algae will go up. So it's almost like an oscillation, like algae will go up, beneficial bacteria goes down. And then when beneficial bacteria starts to come up, algae goes
Algae
down.
goes down.
So it's like
Yeah.
all year long, there's a battle between algae and beneficial bacteria. So,
That
um,
makes a lot of sense. That's how so many things work, right? In these
yeah,
waves or oscillations. So I
that's
think having the flow of something explained to the client as well, saying it is gonna, like you said, change and evolve over time. You can give them little things to watch out for, and they become more part of it as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I always say, you're always going to have algae, but there's things that we can do to limit it. So we reduce runoff entering the pond. We reduce nutrients entering the pond as much as possible, so we don't overstock with fish. We make sure that all our drainage goes away from the edges of the pond. We don't want to pull mulch and soil into the pond. We want to have really good biological filtration. So in larger ponds, instead of using the biofouls, which is that filtration unit, the biological filter, I'll install like a wetland filter. And obviously it's all man-made, but it's an excavation that's lined with the rubber liner, and then it's filled with different sized rock and gravel. And those different sized substrate levels provide houses for beneficial bacteria. So the bigger the pond, the bigger biological filter you need. Um, and so, yeah, maximizing the biological filter, as well as like planting around the pond to reduce sun exposure.
Hmm.
More sun, more algae, more sun, more heat. So with more heat in the water means less oxygen, so less bacteria. So um, yeah, it's a complicated process. And I tell my clients, like, once I'm done, I'm going to do the best job I can to make sure the filtration's nailed, make sure we don't have any runoff, make sure you've got good plantings. We're dosing with beneficial bacteria every few months. But then it's up to nature. Like, nature will take its course, and like, I'm almost not responsible for it at that point. Like,
Yeah.
other pond builders that do a horrible job, they don't know what they're doing. Obviously, they would be responsible for what comes after that point. But if you nail the fundamentals and the basics, the feature should really start to develop and mature as it should. But there unfortunately is many landscapers out there building ponds and giving a bad name for ponds, because it's almost like when I turn up to someone's house, I have to dispel all of these myths about ponds, uh, from the past 50 years of ponds. Yeah, but they've got a bit of a bad name, obviously, because the leaking component, and then like the mosquito component, and the smells, and the having to get in there and clean it up. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
that's comes from the maybe the anaerobic side of things because people just sort of think they can set and forget, but it's not what you are setting and forgetting somewhat, but you're setting it up for success. You're not like just throwing like a pool in the ground and just filling it up and just letting it sit there. It's just not gonna it's gonna take a long time for it to turn into an ecosystem that's gonna work.
yeah,
Um,
that's right. Yeah, and like I'll tell my clients, like, I'm not like a traditional tradie. Like, I'm not like, I'll put up a wall and then I'm gone. You'll never see me again. Like, I want to come back. I want to see how the pond's going. I want you to message me if you see any cool wildlife, or if you have any issues with water quality. If the algae has been persistent, you've tried some beneficial bacteria. I want to come back and just assess it, make sure, okay, we are getting a bit of runoff happening here. We can shade this section a little bit more. We might have to empty out the filter a little bit more. But it's just a balance that you need to find, really.
hmm. Yeah, okay. And your whole like purpose behind doing this as well, obviously, is to, from what I understand, bring in a lot of wildlife into more suburban areas and things like this. Um, I recently had a chat with Jacinta Humphrey, who does a lot of this type of thing, urban ecology, which is really interesting. Just hearing about how the challenges of having when they're building estates and things with houses, they're not thinking about the wildlife and the impact of us being in that environment and how they can then survive. Do you think having things like this in backyards is something that's slightly more achievable, where everybody sort of has their own sovereign land and they can grow and have these little ecosystems rather than having to do it on a on a neighborhood scale, if that makes sense, or maybe a bit of both. Hey guys, really quickly, jumping in, I just want to remind you, if you are not subscribed to this show, that is the number one thing that you can do to show me your support. So if you're finding value from this conversation and you're deeply engaged, I would love you to hit the follow or subscribe button. All right, back to the show.
I would say it's imperative that people take um, control of their own surroundings. And it's crazy how much good or how much positive impact one person can have on the environment. You can go down to your local stream and pick up rubbish, or you can join a volunteer group and plant your streams, and your new parklands that are being developed. You can plant a native garden in your front yard, use indigenous species, and put water out. There's so much people can do, and not relying on the government. However, it's it's also, in my eyes, very important for the government to be involved, because we need to put in regulations that control land developers, that stop them from cramming 100 houses into what used to be maybe 5 or 6 plots, and then there's almost zero tree coverage.
Hmm.
There's almost zero understory. There's no ground covers. It's all grass and concrete. And yeah, all over Adelaide, there's these new housing developments being put up, and farmland is being transitioned into suburbia, and all these beautiful river red gums and beautiful trees that have existed in the landscape are just being chopped down, and then we're putting in things like crepe myrtles, um, and ornamental figs.
Hmm.
It's like not, fruit trees that don't even produce fruit, and it's like, and then grass. Like some people put agapanthus and nandinas out the front, and it is creating an ecological wasteland and an ecological desert where there's like almost zero beneficial insects. The bird life has been dwindled down to like a few blackbirds and some noisy miners. And there's no big gums or anything for the parrots. There's no hollows for all the native marsupial mammals. And it's honestly like just depressing to drive through some of these new suburbs. But there are a couple that have put in little lakes and dams and wetlands, and actually some walking paths through some existing trees. And the quality of living at those places is so much higher, not only for people but for the wildlife as well. But like, even when you look at geographically the different suburbs, older suburbs, the ones that are more expensive to live in always have more tree coverage. So it's like, why are we creating these, like, and you go, these poor areas around, they have like no gum trees. And it's like, well, why are we then chopping down all these gum trees in these new suburbs and jamming houses in them? Like, we're almost creating like poverty. Like,
Yeah.
we're like, why not keep these big, beautiful gum trees and keep the parklands around the suburbs? You know, they say like nature is healing. So why aren't we like healing ourselves with the existing nature that's already here? Instead, we're destroying it and then like becoming sardines, jamming ourselves into these suburbs. And
Oh,
I know in the
sorry.
States it's even worse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the point you said about the having to have incentivized things for housing developers and things like this to include that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
I feel like having that top-down approach just means that it's integrated anyway.
Yeah.
Um, like I'm seeing this all over here as well in Brisbane. That I just literally used to like over in the Redlands. You won't know where it is, obviously, but there's this beautiful area near the coast with beautiful, rich, fertile red soil, and there's all of this rolling hills and farmland that I literally just watch them tear down the entire thing, mulch it all up, and then they're planting, like you said, just these stupid ornamental plants that are just there because they're just like, oh, put a little bit of fill that and make a quick landscape garden. And you're right, it's the heat in these places because it's not cooling. Like the mental health, obviously, it's been proven that being around nature helps your mental health. And then we're creating areas with zero connection to nature. Have you seen, bro, after installing one of these projects or heard from one of your clients or customers, have you heard of bringing back lots of these, lots of wildlife to an area that didn't have any before?
Um, well, I mean, I haven't done any like animal study. Like, I haven't taken numbers and
Of course, yeah.
of what the previous wildlife was, but it's almost certain that it becomes a hotspot for wildlife. Like projects where it's just been like, just a dry backyard has now got 3 or 4 species of native frogs.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's a win for me.
definitely.
Because you provide it's like it may not be the end like habitat for some of these animals, but it's it's a corridor, so birds that may be passing by can come take a drink. Whereas
Mm.
before in summer, there's not a dam in sight, there's no streams flowing, especially here in South Australia. It's almost like a desert, like, and a lot of people don't put out water for wildlife. So by having just this body of water in your yard, you're creating this hotspot, this beacon for wildlife. And I've had clients say that they've had like a koala that like they know it's the same koala that comes by each year. And so this
Cool.
has like a mental mud map in its head, like, okay, these are the trees I love. This is my little watering hole in this backyard.
Mhm.
Um,
Like we do, right?
that's right. Exactly.
Yeah, man. Well, look, I think that's so important just to have. I didn't even think about it like that as something to pass by as a final habitat.
Mm,
Um, but you're right, just having these sort of dotted throughout and having more and more people just putting some of these things into practice.
mm,
And as you say, they become self-sustaining, right? They're ecosystems within themselves that require minimal, if any, long-term maintenance.
mm.
Um, can you talk to that a little bit in terms of how you're thinking about the planting and progression of a site and how you're planning the plants to kind of take over or succeed and then eventually provide shade? Like obviously, when you put a plant in, you go, oh, that's going to be a bigger shrub, so that's going to shade out this eventually. Are you thinking about these kinds of things?
Yeah. When I do my planting, I don't normally do like a grand plan. I kind of get like a bit of a palette of just ground covers, small shrubs. And then if I'm doing like a bigger project with a bit more space, then I'll go into the larger shrubs and the bigger trees. But I like to have a mixture, and I always overplant as well because I account for plant mortality and I
Hmm.
for pests and disease and stuff. So I always overplant. Sometimes to my benefit, sometimes not, because sometimes it's like everything survives, everything is growing so well, and it's like, oh my god, it's this bit of a jungle, strategic cutback and whatnot. But most of the time, after a year or two, we're almost completely covered over the ground. So we've got all the ground covers, we've got grasses, bulbs, and tubers coming through, and then we've got small shrubs, correas, grevilleas, banksias. I like to use primarily natives, and then if I can, I'll use local to the region as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, ideally, I'm wanting to create a dense canopy as soon as possible. So there's um there's there's actually some cool videos about how they build rainforest extremely quickly, and they like lay down big logs, and then they put like soft leaves and mulch, and then they like um yeah, it's pretty cool. I'll have to figure out what it is, but it's like it's just the most quick way to regenerate. I
Yeah.
don't really do that, but in terms of the density, that's my way of doing it. Like my front yard out here, I planted 4 years ago, and it's so dense, it's crazy. I just put tube stocks in. Normally just go with tube stocks because I find the tube stocks grow the best. They
Hmm.
grow the fastest, whether because their root systems are still young and they can send their tap root down really
Hmm.
quickly. Whereas the larger root balls tend to sometimes dry out if they don't get enough water, or they'll fall over because they're top heavy and they don't have the right roots. So I like tube stock, but yeah, my front yard has gone so crazy. And then I've posted videos about some of the wildlife I've had in the front yard. But beforehand, it was just yuccas, like almost nothing. Maybe like I said, the blackbirds and the miners would come in. But we've had like musk lorikeets, rainbow lorikeets, rosellas, galahs. We had the black cockatoos, which was amazing.
Gorgeous.
Um, we've got big pine trees out the back that the black cockatoos love. And it was my dream to get them out in the front yard here. And I've done it a few times now where they've come and landed on the bird perches and they've had a drink out of the bird baths and stuff. So that was probably the most rewarding aspect of my own garden. Um,
Yeah, for sure. You
but yeah,
bring.
like when I plant out for clients, it depends what they're after. Like if they're after just like a simple low maintenance thing, I might just do some ground covers and some grasses. But if they're like on the same wavelength as me, I'll get some acacias, some bottle brush, Banksias, Melaleuca, and just go crazy with it. Just like mimic the natural bushland as quick as possible and as dense as possible.
Very cool. And yeah, obviously using natives brings in natives.
Yeah.
And you've done some work with Clancy. I know that he's like been helping sort of put in a few ideas into bringing native bees into those spaces as well, and putting native bee hotels. There's so many simple things that you can do, that really just enhance these spaces for more diversity.
Yeah.
What's top of mind for you at the moment in terms of what you're doing? What's really interesting to you right now that you're trying to figure out or you're working on or working towards? Is there anything that sticks out for you at the moment?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, um, I mean, I should be fully committed to my business and water features, but I mean, I really enjoy it and I'll probably continue to do it for a long time. But I suppose I admire Clancy for what he's doing, just because he's so behind conservation, and I think he's so good for, we need more young voices out there promoting conservation. Um,
Absolutely.
we can, if we can show the younger generations how important wildlife and the ecosystem of our planet is, um, it's going to help our survival. Sorry, got a
No,
going off.
all
Um,
good.
our survival is um, intrinsically linked to the survival of our oceans and our forests. And at the moment, it seems like we're trying to destroy those things as quick as possible. And it seems almost like conservation is it's almost like the government's way of being like, oh, all right, here you go. Here's a little bit of conservation. Shut up now. Go away. Like
Yeah.
almost, there's almost zero protection of our mature forests and our pristine landscapes. And I think like the measly millions of dollars that they give to conservation is just purely to be like, just vote for me.
Hmm.
I mean, look, I'm pro conservation, but at the same time, I'm going to open up all these forests for mining. I'm allow off coast drilling.
Hmm.
But look, we're trying to save this little quoll. We gave 100,000 to this quoll organization, and it's like that's honestly just so.
Yeah, I think the term I've heard is greenwashing, where they pretend that they're greener or more environmentally friendly just for the vote. But I know that these things like Clancy's doing, like just getting involved and being a voice is really important. So I see that with you as well. And I see that you're pushing these things, talking about them, and through not only your business, but through yourself personally as well. But something that's very important to both of us right now is obviously becoming a dad and becoming a father, a role model, and these types of things. So, firstly, obviously, congratulations. But
Yep.
how's that changed your view in terms of, like you said, the next generation and the importance of these things? You touched on it before, but how's that impacted trying to show your little one the world?
Mm. Um. Yeah. Well, I suppose. I mean, I've always had like a desire to try and help wildlife and conserve the natural world. And I suppose now so more now that I have a child who's going to exceed my lifetime. But to answer your question before about what else I'm looking at doing aside from building water features would be I really want to plant as many trees as possible. Like I want to just
Cool.
almost dedicate my life to tree planting in a way. Um, and they say, not for me to sit under, but for future generations and for future families of birds and insects and anything essentially. So I've done some planting on my partner's father's bit of land just down south of where we are here in Mount Compass. Um, and I've done some little, I've taken seeds from the trees there and I've germinated them and planted them. And I'm
Awesome.
working out which trees grow the fastest. But I've done like maybe 3 or 4 little plots on the farm where I've planted, about a dozen or 2 dozen trees in each plot, and it's so cool to just walk through the trees that are now taller than me and see all the insects that are on them and see the birds eating the insects and stuff. So I suppose that's going to be my goal is to try and use my physical body or my influence or whatever to try and get as many trees in the ground as possible. Um,
Really cool.
just providing a little bit more habitat for for animals, essentially.
For life, really, I think
For
as
life,
well. It's
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it's like that's such a really cool thing, man, because I really resonate with that quote too about the, planting a tree for someone else to sit under.
Mm,
And I often think when I'm sitting under a tree or like going walking through trees and under trees, especially like I just visited Toowoomba for the Carnival of Flowers, and they have up there some enormous trees that have been there for a long time. And you just think like, wow, what was life like back then when they were first planting them and are these, original trees? You just don't see that around Brisbane in the cities and things like that. You just don't see any of these massive trees. So it was nice to sort of see that, but it's your way of paying it forward and creating a better, more diverse, more, nature friendly habitat for us all, right? That's such a cool thing. I
mm,
really like it.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Everyone has the power to make a positive impact, and we can vote for people that we think will help, but at the end of the day, we can see noticeable change just through our own actions. So we have to do things ourselves. Because I often see when I make a video, I'm like, we have the power to plant trees and put native plants in, and then people are like, oh, the government's doing this. There's no point. The government's destroying everything. There's no point us doing that. And it's just like I feel like that's a depressive way to live. And I think we do have the power to change. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, thinking that it's not going to make an impact is quite like unfortunate because obviously if the government is one body of people they don't do very much for us unfortunately, but then if you've got thousands of people that are planting one tree each or one native or something, then everyone's got the power to go and change that, even like you said, at the front of their gardens, in the nature strips, up on the front curbs, utilizing all of this space and turning it into something, which is something that I'm guilty of myself, not doing enough of, but I'd like to try and to get more
Mm.
onto that as well. Um, what's so yeah, apart from the planting trees and things like that, is there anything else exciting that you've got coming up that you want to talk about, or any projects that you're really excited about at the moment?
Well, I recently finished a project down in Mount Compass, which is about 20 minutes from here, and I think that's a cool one. It's like a little pondless waterfall, and it's the homeowner's going to be building a beautiful aviary over it.
Oh wow.
So he's got a collection of tiny native birds. So he's got fairy wrens and silver eyes and little finches and stuff. So I'm looking forward to going back once he's built the aviary over and seeing the little birds, having a drink and stuff. It's kind of sad and good at the same time because he's building this thing, he's kind of cutting it off from the natural world in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit sad, but like the insects will still be able to come in and benefit from the project, and it's going to be cool because insects will be able to come in and they're going to act as food for the encaptivated birds
Mm-hmm.
because they're drawn to the water, so the birds will be able to come through and just eat these natural insects, which will be cool. And then I've got a project coming up, a big recreation pond, so essentially like a pond you can swim in.
Wow.
That's in a place called Harndorf, and Harndorf is the oldest German settlement town in Australia, I think. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
I have a bean. It's actually quite beautiful. It's very
Yeah.
nice.
So I'll be building a water feature, which is kind of like on the main road in Harndorf, which will be
Sweet.
special because they'll have heaps of people walking by to see it. So
Cool.
pretty cool. And yeah, obviously I'll be stocking that with River Murray rainbow fish and some pygmy perch and as many native fish as I can.
That's amazing. What
Yeah.
just quickly on that, what makes it swimmable versus non-swimmable? Is it just more filtration?
It's a good question because I can swim in my ponds just here, and they're not technically swim ponds. So I suppose a swim pond or a recreation style pond. Um, it just yeah, I can't say the exact difference between just a normal wildlife pond and a recreation pond, except for maybe the size.
Yeah.
Um, I also I also install the pumps externally, so there's no electricals actually going into the water.
Hmm.
Um, Not that that's an issue. Like I can get in these ponds and not be electrocuted, and the fish and wildlife aren't being electrocuted. But I think there's new regulations that state like if you're creating a system where people are going to be entering, you can't have pumps in the water.
Fair. Yeah.
But that's a component. And then yeah, just max like doing a massive wetland filter so the water is always as clear as possible and crystal clear because no one really wants to jump into a slimy pond. Um, but yeah, that'll be cool because I'll be doing like a nice beachy section, um, which will be
Wow.
a sloped entry into the pond, which is
Cool.
cool for wildlife and people that just want to kind of walk into the pond in that way. Um, but yeah, in terms of other projects, we're moving down to Mount Compass soon, so we'll be moving house, and then I'll kind of have like this whole landscape to kind of design and think about. I don't want to rush into it too much. I want to like take it really step by step, so I don't, build a pond and then I'm like, oh no, I don't want to put pond here. So, and I want to try live below my means as well, so I can't be putting in massive ponds just yet. I've got to like pace myself. Uh, but I'm really excited just to get to there and have the landscape and think about how am I going to plant it? How am I going to collect water? And yeah, that's going to be a pretty cool process. So I'm thinking about maybe doing some blogging about that. There's some really cool bloggers on YouTube that I kind of look up to. I don't know if you've seen Bo Miles.
No, I haven't.
Look into him. He's done like really cool planting endeavors where he's like gone onto farms and he's planted for 24 hours straight.
Wow.
He's gone back a few years later and just seen this beautiful forest coming out of the ground. And he like picks up rubbish and stuff and like trades it in for native plants. Uh,
Awesome.
Really cool storyteller. And then there's another page on YouTube called Bamba Bass, I think. And he's got this massive pond and he stocks it with bass and he like records the eagles coming in and eating the bass and
Wicked.
yeah, so I'm thinking about doing some blogging and stuff like that, like different projects around the farm. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, obviously planting as much as I can. So yeah, heaps of stuff on the horizon.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again to Brendon for his time. Please go and check out the links down in the description or the show notes where you can go and find out and see some of these incredible projects that Brendon has been working on and has created. Now, if you want to do something yourself, there was plenty of tips in there in this episode of what you can start doing, whether it's going out to your verge to start planting some natives or just simply transforming a little bit of space in your backyard to put some native plants or some water for some wildlife and tend to it and watch and notice what comes by. So I think there's plenty that we can do to help this planet and help our neighborhoods thrive with more wildlife and more ecosystems. But for now, that's it. That's the episode. If you can leave us a review, that would be amazing. It always helps. That's the number one thing you can do. Follow us along, give us some stars, and share the episodes around. But apart from that, I'll see you very soon on the next episode. Thank you for watching and listening, and bye for now.